It's been a while since I've made a video about MCAS, and I find them quite difficult to make, if I'm honest, because they're quite depressing, because it really is talking about my own reality every day, and it can be really hard. And if you too are a sufferer of MCAS, I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know about MCAS, and if you'd like to find out further information, I will leave a video down below, but I'm not going to go through the signs and symptoms in this video. It's more about the experience of living with this disease. So I think the biggest stumbling block that a person with MCAS faces is dealing with doctors. And I know here in the UK there are very few doctors that know about MCAS, so it's really hard to get taken seriously with this condition. And I think basically we all have to go through a process of self-diagnosis, because doctors aren't going to tell you generally that you have this condition, really, because it's not recognised by our NHS, because we have no NICE guidelines, which are really important for doctors to refer to whenever they're dealing with any health condition in any patient. So I'm not blaming doctors here, because very often, or in every instance actually, they don't have this information to hand. And I had years of gaslighting from my GPs, and I think my first MCAS symptoms started on Boxing Day in 2018, and they've just got kind of progressively worse, really. But it's only now actually that I can look back at my whole life and see that I've had MCAS symptoms, but it arrived in full force in 2018. So I've been dealing with MCAS every day since then. I've been to a whole array of different departments at the hospital, because it's really difficult to get any joined up thinking. So yeah, I've had to see neurology, and they diagnosed me with functional neurological disorder, which I haven't got FND, I've got MCAS. And I've been to, what else, cardiology, ENT, endocrinology, all sorts of departments, but I've never been able to find a doctor who even knows about this condition, let alone being able to talk to them about it. So like basically every person with MCAS in the UK, I had to go privately, and I've not been able to work properly since 2018. So it's something that I'm find hard to do, to pay for private treatment, and now I'm not in a position to be able to do it at all. But I was at least able to get a formal diagnosis of MCAS, to then be able to go to my GP and say, look, this is what I have. And the second battle was getting medication for MCAS, because although my private doctor was happy to prescribe this, it was absolutely too expensive for me to be able to afford. So at first my GP flatly refused to prescribe this medication. Well, he actually prescribed one of them, the cheaper one, but the more expensive one, no. So through the MCAS Facebook forums, I was finding out actually that there was a disparity when it came to medications and who was getting prescribed medications. And it seemed that some people were getting prescribed sodium cromolyn, which is a mast cell stabilizer. So I went back to my GP to say, look, other people are getting this medication through the NHS, so why can't I? And he started saying, we can't afford it, we can't afford all sorts of stuff. And it led to me having, well, essentially an autistic meltdown. And I am mortified about what I said next to him. So please know this before I tell you, but I was so exasperated and so upset. I said to him, well, I didn't say actually, I barked at him, I wish I had diabetes. And honestly, I'm so mortified that I said this, but I just was at such, I don't know, just such at the end of my tether with all of it, because I've just never been treated seriously with MCAS. And as anybody with MCAS will tell you, it can be a really dangerous condition to live with. For instance, I have laryngospasm, so it means that my throat seals over and I can't breathe, and it is the most frightening experience. Many other people with MCAS have anaphylaxis, and I have like early stages of anaphylaxis, so my tongue swells, and so I get itchy back and stuff. But thankfully for me, it's never gone into full anaphylaxis. But this can be a progressive illness for many people, so I'm really worried that this is something that is going to be in my future. So it's a really dangerous condition to live with, and more so because we're not getting the help and supports and medications that we need in many cases. So anyway, I think this kind of jolted my GP, or his thought process anyway, because once I left that appointment, I received a notification from my GP practice that he was going to speak to, I don't know, some of the people in the field to see whether he'd be allowed to prescribe this medication for me. And I found out a few weeks later that yes, they were going to prescribe it for me, and I was just so relieved. And sodium cromolyn has been really helpful for me. It has reduced many of my symptoms. I'm thinking interstitial cystitis, which was getting really bad. I was getting so much pain. And it has helped with some kind of food reactions as well. But what worries me is that he said to me that this was only kind of like a temporary measure, and if our or my health authority decided against giving me this medication, this could happen at any time. So I have no guarantee that I'm going to receive this medication going forward, really. I'm kind of living month to month, and if I get my medication, I'm lucky for that month. But if I were to buy this medication privately, I'd be looking at, I don't know, at least £150 a month, and I'm not working. I had to give up working through MCAS. I'm an artist, I'm a sculptor, so I can't use clay regularly anymore because I can't get loads of colour pigment into my system, because if you have MCAS, you have to be really careful with environmental triggers. So I am really reluctant to use clay on the regular now. And in all honesty, aside from my issues with clay, I wouldn't be able to run a business now anyway, due to the multitude of symptoms I have with MCAS, such as chronic pain and fatigue. So I'm now in a position where this channel, Creative Autistic, is my main endeavour. And as much as I love this channel, and I genuinely do, it only brings in a tiny income for me. And as an aside, I am thinking of starting a Patreon in the next few months, so I'll have more news on that soon, hopefully. So yeah, while my medication is really helping me, I'm still really affected by MCAS, and I've tried various medications, and very many of them don't work for me. And actually, I do need to say here that I'd be grateful if you didn't give me any recommendations for medications that you've tried if you do have MCAS, because we're all very different, and I am super sensitive to lots of medications. So yeah, please don't give me your recommendations. It's obviously a very slow and complicated process for all of us. And it so frustrates me because I think many doctors are happy to ignore MCAS as much as possible, or to, deny its existence actually in some cases. But I was scheduled for a gallbladder removal operation last February, and I was sat ready to go into theatre. I was in the gown on the bed ready to go in, but it was cancelled at the last minute because it suddenly kind of dawned on the doctors that they don't know very much about MCAS, so they were really reluctant to proceed with it. And I was really felt really let down by all of it, actually. I felt like I'd been honest about my MCAS since day one, so why did it take them until now to say look, we don't know very much about this, so we're not going to proceed with this operation today. Certainly we don't want to go through day surgery. We would rather you come into hospital when we can book you in for the night. And I'm still to hear from them. You know, this is really frustrating because my gallbladder is even more painful now than it was before. So I'm kind of stuck in a state of limbo, really. And it's, yeah, it's so easy just to feel wholly let down by the medical profession on this. And I've contacted my local MP or Member of Parliament as well. And I just got a very generic response back that, you know, basically, oh dear. So, yeah, I don't know. It's really difficult making videos like this because I do try and inject a little bit of positivity into my videos where possible. But when it comes to MCAS, it feels impossible, really. And hence why I don't really like making them. But I do think it's important to discuss MCAS now and again, really to give visibility to people who are living with this condition. And, you know, there are people who are even more affected by this condition than me. And it's just frustrating how we're all just expected to live with it and pay for our own diagnoses and pay for our own treatments when very often we're the people who can least afford to be able to do this. And as I say, I can no longer afford private treatment, and in fact my private doctor has now left practice, so I'm not registered with anybody, which is really quite a daunting position to be in. And I think even if I wanted to get another private doctor in the UK, there are so few out there. And I think even the ones that are working, and to be honest I don't know of any, their waiting lists will be humongous by now because there are so many of us that are desperate for treatments, but we're just not being heard. Sorry, it's just a sort of negative kind of rant today, but I just get so overwhelmed with living with this condition, and it can be really frightening, as I said. And if you too are out there living with MCAS, you have all of my solidarity, and I just hope you're getting through as best as you can, really. I've heard through the forums actually that things might be a little better in the US, but again, I think it's a case of trying to find a doctor who knows about MCAS because it is, you know, just not really known about by very many doctors. So I'd be interested to know how you're getting on if you live in the US or indeed any other country, but certainly here in the UK, it's a really difficult condition to live with because, yeah, we get no support, no help, and if we get medication, we are very lucky. So anyway, I think that's going to be it for today. So thank you for watching. Comments would always be appreciated. And if you don't know what to say, leave an orange heart down below for friendship. And I'll see you again soon.